Hey guys, welcome back. So today we are going to be answering another one of your questions that you guys left. If you guys don't know what I'm doing for the month of December, instead of doing Vlogmas and vlogging every day, I am going through and just doing basically a one long Q&A series, but I'm spending time answering each question in an individual video so then you guys can hear the full answer instead of me just trying to fit everything into 10 to 15 minutes. So if you want to have me answer any of your burning questions, you can leave them below in the comments or you can email them to contactbrookeandpippa@gmail.com and we'll just kind of keep this going as long as you guys are interested in it. But today's question is something I haven't talked about, I don't think at all this year. I think I did a video on it last year. So the question / comment is, I'd love you to talk about healing from addictions and how your story is similar and different from others living sober and how you cope on the road and why being on the road is a way to cope. So if you guys don't know, because I've made I think like one or two videos on it in the past, I don't talk about it a ton just because it's not a huge portion of my life anymore, but I stopped drinking a little over 5 years ago now. And I used the book This Naked Mind to be able to do that. I had tried just all of the different kind of methods of getting sober that you could. A lot of it really had to do with like the people who were around me at the time and really influencing that and just not feeling comfortable in kind of like who I was and not feeling comfortable with like dealing with my emotions. Having everything in my life at that point kind of be under a microscope from the people around me. And it just became kind of like an escapist tendency, like a lot of addictions tend to. And it was to the point of just like, obviously, I had started drinking at work. I was drinking then nonstop by the time I got home until I went to bed for the night. I was constantly feeling awful. And I knew I needed to quit because I have a lot of alcoholics in my family. And obviously, seeing how it affects you 20, 30 years and beyond, obviously doesn't look great when you can literally see your future and the people that are around you. So I had a client actually, this was back when I was doing hair. I had a client who suggested This Naked Mind by Annie Grace to me. I had taken a vacation out to Colorado, and so on the drive from Indiana to Colorado and back, I listened to This Naked Mind on audiobook because it was free, I think, on Audible back in the day. I don't know if it still is, or you could probably go to your library and get a free copy, or maybe with Black Friday and stuff still kind of going on, maybe there is a discount on it. But anyways, so it's basically going through the actual effects of alcohol on your body that doesn't have like a religious spin or a like shameful spin on it. It really much like it really laid out what exactly was happening, how long alcohol actually stays in your system, the symptoms you might be trying to numb that are actually being caused by the continued drinking because it doesn't leave your system for much longer than people think. And so I just was kind of going through the checklist and reading through all of it. And she is a big believer in kind of like spontaneous sobriety. Like there's not a lot of lead up to it. There's not a lot of whatever. You just kind of decide that you should be done and this isn't good for your health and that you kind of move forward just the same way as if you were diagnosed with some sort of other health condition, right? Like if you go to the doctor one day and they tell you you can't drink milk anymore and that it will be super harmful to your health and like the only way to cure that is to stop drinking milk. You go home that day and you stop drinking milk and then you kind of just move on with your life. And obviously you can't just like quit alcohol cold turkey. Like that's not obviously something that's safe for a lot of people to do. So depending on where you are in your consumption of alcohol, obviously you need to get assistance from a doctor or from a rehab facility or something like that. Luckily, I had already been backing off a lot on my drinking, and so I didn't have super terrible withdrawals, but it definitely wasn't great. Like I was miserable the entire time. I probably for a good 2 weeks after I had stopped. But you cannot quit alcohol cold turkey if you didn't know that. You really can't once you are consuming it at a higher rate than a lot of people. And it can actually be deadly for you to do that. So I'm not going to say like, yes, the spontaneous decision to be done with alcohol can be made in an instant, but you can't just decide to stop then. A lot of the times, if you go even just to the ER and you tell them, like, I need to quit and I need to be in a safe place while I am withdrawing, they will check your insurance and they will either check you into the hospital or give you a recommendation of where you can go, where someone can monitor you to make sure that it's done the safe and proper way, which I think is why a lot of people don't quit, because it's just easier to kind of keep going. So I would look into that if that's something that you feel like you need. And I think more people, especially today, especially with how much drinking went on during behind closed doors in the pandemic, probably don't realize how where that threshold is. And I think a lot of people end up in really dangerous situations at home because they don't realize how dangerous it really can be to just quit alcohol cold turkey. So anyways, off of my soapbox on that one. So over, the course of that trip, unfortunately, I like completely ruined my own trip by trying to completely wean myself off. And then on my way home, after that, I was pretty much completely done with alcohol. I immediately then had to turn around and go to the last Thanksgiving that I went to, with my family. And I got to see, for the first probably time in my life, the sober side of what it looks like to have a lot of family members that heavily drinking, especially in like a family holiday kind of situation. And instead of it like triggering me into wanting to drink more, it really made it kind of like a solid choice for me. I really saw very clearly then into my future, and it's kind of risky. Less than like 2 months, I think, after I had decided to stop, to go to a function like that, especially when it was miles and miles away from home. Like, I couldn't just leave very easily. I was staying there, and it just was not a great scene to be around. And I saw like the influence it kind of had on my younger cousins and everything like that. And I just was like, I think this is time for me to kind of like step away from this part and to try to set at least an example in my own life that you can change everything. You still don't have to be, a wet towel on every social situation. You can still have fun. You can still live your life and do everything that you want. Like, you don't have to continue this cycle, basically. And I was really proud that I could do all of that and have then for this rest of those 5 years. Now, I know the question specifically goes into like how my situation was similar or different than other people's sobriety journeys. And I think everybody is different. I think that's the problem, right? Like, we're all looking to try to find somebody who relates to our situation so specifically. And I think because addiction is such a personal rabbit hole that you kind of go down, because it has so much family influence, it has so much outside influence, and it's just like dealing with what you are dealing with inside. I think you have to start there. You have to be doing it for yourself. And I know that that's like so cliche, but it was more me not wanting to basically go down this path for the rest of my life. I was literally worried about like the long-term future of it all. And I think that's what motivated me, because I was like, if I'm going to be this bitter and this addicted and this like feeling disgusting before I even turn 30 every single day of my life now until I die, I'm like, no wonder the people around me act the way that they do and are so like tired of life. And I just never wanted to be like that, and especially at the cause of alcohol. And so obviously it was super costly. And so a lot of people make these decisions for a lot of reasons. And I think, as much of to say that it's like an everyday struggle for me to relate to a lot of people that it probably is, it really is not, as much as it is when emotional things kind of come up for me. It was really a lot of work for me to go to therapy and to work through the things that were causing me to want to numb that out or drown that out, or even the fact that like a lot of the times I was way more emotional when I drank than like crazy or numb or anything like that, because that was like the safe time alone in my room to be able to do that. And I think learning how to be like that in my everyday life, to get that out of my system and just kind of like keep moving instead of like repressing it until I can be alone in the dark with tequila in my hand, then it kind of became less of this huge like background noise, and it just kind of is something I can, sit there and cry for like 2 seconds and then kind of move on with my day instead of it building up and building up and building up. And so I think I had to work through a lot of that to where now I don't think about it quite as much. I just, unless something really big comes up where I feel really trapped in what's happening in my life, I tend to not feel like that. That also goes into the other part of the question of like how being on the road helps. And I think being on the road fulfills my need to run away, in the fact that I'm not really running away from my problems. Like, your problems follow you no matter where you go. Like, you are still you in every state and place that you go. But it helps to like continue moving forward. I can't think of another time in my life where on a whim I can just decide to pick up and drive to another state and to another place because I'm not feeling so great in the spot that I'm at right this second. And then it actively helps like pull me out of those feelings, and because I'm doing something active. Whereas if I lived in a house and felt really trapped by like the mortgage payment or the rent payment or having to go to work and I felt like I could never get out of that loop, I think being on the road does help that. It also helps that a lot of times, if especially when I was living in the Honda or in, cars in general, like, you can't have open containers in the car. So legally, I am such a rule follower that like I couldn't imagine like keeping alcohol in the car because and not being safe to drive all the time, because I am such a rule follower in that weird part of my brain. Obviously, I was like maladapting that to different parts of my life. I'm not saying I'm perfect in every part, but for some reason that's like a hard stop for me. Like, if I know I shouldn't be doing it and that it'll eventually catch up with me, that I was like, well, if I can't afford it and I can't keep it in the car because it's open and my only choice would be to finish it or whatever, but then if I finish it, I'm too drunk to drive, and what if something unsafe happens and I'm like out of control, then it stops me from wanting to partake anymore, I guess. The safety thing and the control thing for me has always been like a really big thing, because I would never be able to live with myself if I couldn't take Pippa to the vet if she needed to go, or if I couldn't leave a situation or got put in a situation because I was too drunk to drive. So I think that actively in my like adult life, as I've gotten older and like kind of gotten through a lot of this stuff, it stops me from wanting to ever go back to it. And then just the fact that I feel so much better every single day. Like, I felt awful every day of my life and woke up hungover all the time. Like, it just was not a thing. And I can't imagine going back and feeling that bad all the time. I don't feel great every day when I wake up, but I definitely don't feel like I'm actively dying. And I think that is also a big part of it, because when things are already a little bit harder when you're on the road, to feel like actual death like that all the time, I don't think I would make it very long anyways. The money part was obviously huge in stopping me when I first got on the road, because I literally couldn't afford basically to feed myself and Pippa a lot of the time. There was no way I could keep up with the amount of money that I was spending on alcohol, especially during like the pandemic and stuff too. I was kind of lucky that it could have been really bad to go straight into a pandemic right after you get sober and be like stuck at home with your thoughts and everything like that. But I had no money. So I was really focused on like survival at that point, and I think it really distracted me. And then it continued when I was on the road until I started YouTube. And so I have more than enough money to drink now, but now I see how beneficial it is to not. So most of the time, it's not even a thought that crosses my mind. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying that it doesn't come up for me ever, but I think it comes up for me a lot less than a lot of people. Now, I don't know how I'm similar or different than people, and I don't know how this would apply to you, because I'm not part of AA. I'm not a part of a lot of groups that talk about their sobriety or anything like that. I've never been that kind of person. I don't like go to support groups. I don't go to meetings. I don't like chit chat about it all the time. If that's something that's helpful for you, I think you should really seek that out. I think Al-Anon is probably a better choice than like Alcoholics Anonymous. Al-Anon, I think, is more non-denominational from what I've heard, and AA is more religious based. So if you're looking for non-religious based things, I think I would go with that. If you're looking for just facts, I always recommend This Naked Mind. It completely changed my life, and it doesn't have any spin at all to it, which is really nice. And I think that's how I consume information the best, is learning the facts and not learning that I should just be shameful about the decisions and everything that I've made. I think that doesn't help a lot of people a lot of the time. It just makes them feel worse. And I think most people who have some sort of vice or something that they're not doing, or that they know that they shouldn't be doing, or that doesn't make them feel good, I think they already know that it happens. And so to make people feel worse about it, or that they have to repent for it constantly, or have it in the forefront of their mind when they're just trying to move on to the next chapter, I don't think is very beneficial for me personally. And I have heard from a lot of people it's not beneficial for them either. But the community around those groups, I think it does help a lot of people and helps keep them accountable. So I think you have to just kind of try things on and try things out, just like everywhere else in life. And if you don't want to do that, you can always do it privately with a therapist. That's kind of what I did, I guess. I let them know that I was trying to quit drinking, but I didn't want to sit and talk about drinking the entire session, because then you want it more. It's at the forefront of your mind all the time. And so basically I just was like, okay, my goal is obviously to quit, but I also need to address everything that's underneath. And as I kind of peeled back all of that stuff is where it became way easier to not drink all the time. So I hope that helps. That is just my personal experience with it. I don't talk about it a ton because, like I said, it's not something that's on my mind constantly, like at the forefront of my mind. I would say if you can take it or leave it, when you're living on the road, it is safer, obviously, to not be drinking a lot when you are living in a vehicle or need to leave a situation quickly, or you need to have your wits about you because you have kids or you have a pet that you have to take care of. I think that's more of the bigger part that I am a proponent of. Like, if you want to be safe as a solo traveler, obviously not adding substances to it is going to make it safer, because you will be fine to drive and you will be able to make quick and logical decisions, because if you don't have anything affecting you mentally, that's always easier. But everybody who watches me is older than me pretty much. I think over 75% of my viewership is in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. So you guys are all older than me. You guys probably already know this. And so I think it's one of those things. I'm not talking to younger people. I'm talking to adults who can make their own decisions. And if you want to party at your campsite, that is your right to do so. But I think for people who are interested in this or interested in the culture around it, I would say any person I've ever met on the road since I started traveling, while I already was alcohol free, I have never, ever, ever, ever been in a situation socially where somebody judged me for it. I think part of being on the road is that everybody is living an alternative lifestyle, and that includes alcohol, drugs, sobriety. That includes wanting different beliefs here, there, and the other. Everybody's out here doing their own thing. So to meet someone who has a differing opinion on drugs or alcohol, or even just the lifestyle in general, is something you are literally going to experience every time you meet somebody new. So for someone to say like, oh no thanks, I brought Sprite or I brought Diet Cokes with me, it's a very normal thing, because you'll meet probably more people who have alternative feelings about things faster than anywhere else, like, in the world. So I wouldn't really worry about that. Like, if you were worried about going to a social gathering or something like that and that you have to partake in anything, again, you're still an adult with free will. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do, but you will find people who think the same, or even if they don't, they are very tolerant and welcoming with how you feel about alcohol. So yeah, that's my little rant for the morning on sobriety / my experience with it. I hope this helps somebody. I will link the other videos that I've made on it in the past. I've given more like specific details in the past, but I don't want to just keep remaking the same videos over and over again. So, like I said, if you guys have any other questions, leave them below in the comments or email them to me. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!